Waitress assumes Billionaire is just a depressed lonely man, then learns he owns the luxury hotel. And everything changes. She never expected to fall for him, especially not after discovering his secret. But when the truth about his identity finally came to light, she'd have to choose between her pride and the love that had unexpectedly blossomed in the most unlikely place. And just when she thought she knew everything about him, another shocking revelation would change everything forever. The Grand Majestic Hotel stood like a gleaming monument to luxury in downtown Chicago, its polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers a stark contrast to the life Ellie Morgan knew. At 26, she was just another waitress in the hotel's five-star restaurant, balancing plates and dreams with equal precision. "Order up for table 12, called Marco, the head chef, sliding a plate of perfectly seared scallops across the counter. Ellie grabbed it with practiced ease. "Thanks, Marco. Is this for the guy in the corner again?" Marco nodded. "Third time this week. Same table, same order, same sad eyes." Ellie glanced toward table 12. There sat a man in his mid-30s, dressed in a simple gray sweater that looked expensive but understated. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and despite being surrounded by Chicago's elite, he seemed utterly alone. "What's his deal anyway?" she asked, adjusting her apron. "No clue," Marco shrugged. "But he tips like a dream, so who cares?" As Ellie approached table 12, she noticed the man staring out the window at the Chicago skyline, lost in thought. His eyes held a heaviness she recognized all too well, the weight of carrying something no one else could see. "Your scallops, sir," she said, placing the plate before him. He looked up, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. "Thank you, Ellie," he said, reading her name tag. "Enjoy your meal," she replied professionally, but as she turned to leave, he spoke again. "Actually, would you mind, just talking for a minute?" The request caught her off guard. Hotel policy strictly prohibited fraternizing with guests, but something in his voice, a genuine loneliness, made her pause. "I'm sorry, sir, I'm not really supposed to." "Just a minute," he said. "I've been coming here all week, and you're the only person who's looked at me like I'm actually visible." Against her better judgment, Ellie slid into the chair across from him. "1 minute," she said. "And then I have to get back to work before my manager has a conniption." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. "I'm Jack," he said, offering his hand. "Ellie," she replied, shaking it. "But you already knew that." "So, Ellie, what's your story? How does someone with eyes as kind as yours end up serving overpriced seafood to people who don't appreciate it?" She laughed despite herself. "That's a loaded question for a 1-minute conversation. Then give me the highlight reel." Ellie studied him, trying to figure out his angle. Rich guys hitting on waitresses wasn't exactly uncommon, but Jack seemed different, genuinely interested rather than predatory. "Art school dropout," she said finally. "Turns out passion doesn't pay the bills. Now I'm here, saving up to maybe try again someday." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "What kind of art?" "Photography. I wanted to capture moments that tell stories." She glanced at her watch. "And my minute is up. Enjoy your scallops, Jack." As she walked away, she felt his eyes following her, but not in the way men usually watched her. It felt more like recognition, like he'd seen something in her that others missed. For the next 2 weeks, Jack became a regular at table 12. Each time, he'd order the scallops, and each time, he'd ask Ellie to sit with him for just a minute. Those minutes gradually stretched longer, and Ellie found herself looking forward to their brief conversations. She learned he was from Seattle originally. That he loved dogs but traveled too much to have one. That his favorite color was the particular shade of blue the sky turned just before sunset. Small details that painted a picture of a man who seemed surprisingly normal despite his obvious wealth. What she didn't learn was what he did for a living or why he spent so many evenings alone in a hotel restaurant. You know, she said one evening, most people don't come to the Grand Majestic to eat alone 3 times a week. Jack smiled that smile that had become increasingly familiar. Maybe I'm not here for the food. The implication hung between them, charged with possibility. Ellie. Her manager's sharp voice cut through the moment. Table 7 needs their check. Duty calls, she said, standing quickly. Wait, Jack said, reaching for her hand. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Not here. Somewhere else. As equals. Ellie hesitated. Dating customers was definitely against policy. But Jack wasn't just any customer anymore. He was, well, she wasn't sure what he was. Okay, she said finally. But I pick the place. Somewhere normal people eat. His face lit up. It's a date. The following evening, Ellie met Jack at a small Italian restaurant in her neighborhood, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in Chianti bottles. She'd chosen it deliberately, curious to see how a man who clearly belonged in 5-star establishments would react to such humble surroundings. To her surprise, Jack seemed completely at ease, chatting with the elderly owner and complimenting the homemade bread with genuine enthusiasm. So, she said, twirling pasta around her fork, are you ever going to tell me what you do? Or why you spend so much time at the Grand Majestic? Jack's expression shifted slightly. I'm in investments. Boring stuff, really. And the hotel? I'm working on a project there. He quickly changed the subject. Tell me more about your photography. What kind of stories do you want to tell? Ellie let the deflection slide, too caught up in the rare opportunity to talk about her passion. Real ones. Not the polished, perfect moments people share online. I want to capture the in-between times, the raw, unfiltered seconds when people are just being. Jack leaned forward, genuinely interested. Like what? Like. She thought for a moment. Like the way your eyes crinkle at the corners when you're really smiling, not just being polite. Or how you tap your fingers when you're thinking about something you don't want to say. You notice a lot, he said softly. Occupational hazard of being both a waitress and a photographer. You learn to read people. Their conversation flowed effortlessly through dinner and dessert, and when Jack walked her home, Ellie realized with a start that she hadn't enjoyed someone's company this much in years. At her apartment door, he hesitated. I had a wonderful time tonight. Me too, she admitted. Can I see you again? Ellie knew she should be cautious. Jack was still essentially a stranger, one who was hiding something, at that. But there was an authenticity to him that drew her in. Yes, she said simply. What followed was a whirlwind romance that defied Ellie's expectations. Jack took her to art galleries and hole-in-the-wall jazz clubs. They spent rainy afternoons in bookstores and sunny mornings in the park. He listened when she talked about her dreams and never made her feel small for working as a waitress. But there were oddities she couldn't ignore. He never invited her to his place. He sometimes took mysterious phone calls that left him tense and distracted. And he still wouldn't fully explain his connection to the Grand Majestic. Then came the night that changed everything. Ellie was working a particularly busy shift when she overheard her manager speaking to the hotel's general manager. Mr. Donovan is coming to inspect the restaurant tomorrow, the general manager said, his voice tense. Everything needs to be perfect. The owner himself, her manager replied, clearly nervous. But he never comes to this location. Well, he's coming now. Apparently, he's been in Chicago for weeks, keeping a low profile while he decides whether to sell the property. Ellie nearly dropped her tray. Jack had mentioned his last name was Donovan during one of their dates. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be. But as she served table 12 that evening, Jack's usual table, she couldn't shake the suspicion forming in her mind. You seem distracted tonight, Jack said, studying her face. Just tired, she lied. Hey, Jack, what did you say your last name was again? A flicker of something, alarm, crossed his face. Donovan. Why? Ellie's heart sank. No reason. The next day, she arrived at work early, determined to confront Jack when he inevitably showed up for his inspection. She'd rehearsed what she would say, how she would demand to know why he'd lied to her, played with her feelings while pretending to be something he wasn't. But as the staff lined up to greet the owner, the man who walked through the door wasn't Jack. It was an older gentleman with silver hair and Jack's same warm eyes. Mr. Donovan, welcome to the Grand Majestic Chicago, the general manager said, shaking his hand. Confusion washed over Ellie. If this was Mr. Donovan, then who was Jack? Her question was answered moments later when Jack himself walked in behind the older man. And this is my son, Jack Donovan, who will be taking over operations of the Chicago property, the older man announced. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Jack wasn't just wealthy, he was the heir to the entire Donovan Hotel empire. And he'd been coming to the restaurant not as a lonely patron, but as the future owner, evaluating the property while keeping his identity secret. When Jack's eyes found hers in the lineup, they widened with panic. Ellie held his gaze for one long, hurt moment before turning and walking straight to the employee locker room. She changed out of her uniform, grabbed her belongings, and left through the back door without a word. Her phone buzzed incessantly with texts and calls from Jack as she walked home in the rain, but she ignored them all. How could she have been so naive? So easily fooled? 3 days passed. Ellie didn't return to work. She didn't answer Jack's calls. She sat in her apartment, feeling like a complete fool, replaying every moment they'd shared, wondering how much had been real and how much had been an act. On the 4th day, a knock came at her door. She knew who it was before she even looked through the peephole. Go away, Jack, she called through the door. Please, Ellie. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Why? So you can lie to me some more. So I can explain, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Please. Against her better judgment, she opened the door. Jack stood there, looking nothing like the powerful hotel heir he was. His hair was a mess, his eyes rimmed with red, his expensive clothes wrinkled. You have 5 minutes, she said coldly. He stepped inside, but didn't move toward her. I never meant to lie to you, he began. When I first came to the restaurant, I was just doing my job, evaluating the property, seeing if it was worth keeping in our portfolio. And what? I was just part of your evaluation? No, he exclaimed. That first day, when I asked you to sit with me, that wasn't planned. I was just lonely. My whole life, people have treated me differently because of my name, my family's money. But you didn't know who I was, and you treated me like a person, not a bank account. So you deliberately kept me in the dark. At first, yes, he admitted. But then I got to know you, and I fell for you, and I kept trying to find the right moment to tell you the truth, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me now, he said quietly. Like I'm not the person you thought I knew. Ellie crossed her arms. How am I supposed to trust anything you say? Our entire relationship was built on a lie. Not the important parts, Jack insisted, stepping closer. Not the way I feel about you. Not the way you make me see the world differently. Not the way I've never felt more myself than when I'm with you. Pretty words from a man who owns a luxury hotel chain, she said bitterly. I don't want to lose you, Ellie, he said, his voice raw with emotion. Tell me how to fix this. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the same man who had sat at table 12 all those nights, the man who had listened to her dreams with genuine interest, who had made her laugh and feel seen in a way no one else ever had. But she also saw a man who had kept a fundamental truth from her, who had let her believe he was someone else. I don't know if you can fix this, Jack, she said finally. I need time to think. He nodded, respecting her boundary even as pain flashed across his face. I understand. But before I go, there's something I want to give you. From his pocket, he pulled a small envelope and placed it on her coffee table. What's that? She asked suspiciously. Open it after I leave, he said. And Ellie? Whatever you decide, I want you to know that what we had, what we could still have, is the most real thing I've ever experienced. With that, he walked out, closing the door softly behind him. Ellie stared at the envelope for a long time before finally picking it up. Inside was a check for an amount that made her gasp, along with a note in Jack's handwriting. Asterisk, this isn't a bribe or a way to buy your forgiveness. It's an investment in the stories you want to tell. The world needs your eye, your perspective. Whether or not you can forgive me, don't give up on your dreams. Jack, asterisk. Tears welled in her eyes as she held the check, enough money to go back to school, to buy professional equipment, to start the career she'd always wanted. But was it a genuine gesture or just another way for a rich man to ease his conscience? 2 weeks later, Ellie found herself standing outside the Grand Majestic, camera in hand. She hadn't cashed the check. She hadn't contacted Jack. But she had been thinking, about trust and truth, about mistakes and forgiveness, about the man she'd fallen for and whether he was real or just an illusion. She'd come to take photographs, to capture the hotel through her lens, to tell its story and maybe, in the process, to understand her own. As she adjusted her settings, a familiar voice spoke behind her. Your minute's up, you know. She turned to find Jack standing there, hands in his pockets, a tentative smile on his face. What? That first day, when you sat with me. You said you could only talk for a minute. His smile turned sad. It's been the longest minute of my life. Ellie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm still mad at you, she said. I know. You should have told me the truth from the beginning. I know that too. And I didn't cash your check. I don't want your money. Jack nodded. I understand. But the offer stands, not as a boyfriend or whatever we were, but as someone who believes in your talent. Ellie studied him, trying to reconcile the Jack she knew with the Jack Donovan, Hotel Heir. Why are you really here, Jack? He took a deep breath. To tell you that I'm staying in Chicago permanently. I've decided not to sell the hotel. And to ask if you might consider giving us, a second chance. Why should I? Because I'm still the same guy who sat at table 12. The one who loves the color of the sky at sunset and can't have a dog because he travels too much, though that part's changing now. He stepped closer. The guy who fell in love with a waitress who sees stories where others just see moments. The word love hung between them, new and fragile and terrifying. You love me, she whispered. More than I thought possible, he admitted. Enough to respect whatever decision you make. Enough to wait, if that's what you need. Ellie looked up at the Grand Hotel behind them, then back at Jack. The man who had lied about his identity but had never once made her feel like she wasn't enough exactly as she was. I need time, she said finally. And honesty. Complete honesty from now on. Hope flickered in his eyes. Does that mean? It means I'm willing to try, she said. One day at a time. Jack's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. That's all I'm asking for. As they walked together toward the hotel entrance, Ellie realized that sometimes the most beautiful stories aren't the perfect.